Okay, Tony, stay calm, stay collected, gather your thoughts. I know you witnessed a lot of heavy shit in the last 90 minutes. I mean, that was one of the saddest, most depressing films you've ever seen. But you gotta be strong. Okay, don't show the subscribers your weakness. Don't cry at the beginning of this review. Do not cry. Show them that you're ready to talk about the film. Okay, game face. Game face. Setsuko! Why, world? Why? Hey guys, the Black Critic Guy back with another review for Studio Ghibli month. And today I'll be reviewing Grave of the Fireflies. Oh, this is gonna be a really sad one, guys. And to join me on this very somber occasion is my good friend, BOBSAMURAI, who I've been dying to have on my channel for a very long time, and finally we're together for Studio Ghibli month. What's up, Bob?
BOBSAMURAI here. I review anime movies, anime series. I have all sorts of anime discussions. I love to do a lot of anime things, and this is probably one of the sadder anime that I have seen. I literally just filled a bathtub with tears after watching this movie, and then I cried a little bit more. It's pretty sad.
Now, the story of Grave of the Fireflies chronicles the lives of siblings Seta and Setsuko, who lost everything after a firebombing destroyed their town and now try to survive in war-torn Japan. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, this was a tough movie to watch. I mean, I heard so much about Grave of the Fireflies. One of my good friends from college, JW, the way he would describe it is, let's say you got sucker punched in the face and then you were forced to watch like 10 hours of sad movies. That's basically Grave of the Fireflies in a nutshell. Wouldn't you agree, Bob?
I remember the first time I saw this movie, I didn't know what to expect. I knew who it was made by, and I thought, okay, this is gonna be a beautiful movie. Of course, I knew it was about war. I stick it in, and the very first words was like, I died on this day, and I was like, okay, well, that definitely changed the tone of things a little bit.
Yeah, the movie starts off literally on a sad note, and it never lets up. The movie continuously gets sadder and sadder and more depressing and more depressing. But believe it or not, in a strange way, this has to be one of the most beautiful movies Studio Ghibli has ever made, as it's able to capture realism like no other film I've ever seen. And also its director, Isao Takahata, he's a master at capturing realism. This film and Only Yesterday are some of the realest animated films I've ever seen, and they are both very beautiful.
Grave of the Fireflies is based on a book which was also based on a true story, and Seta, our protagonist here, it actually is someone who lived through these horrendous events, and his death in the beginning of the movie is actually symbolic of him letting go of the tragedies which unfold later on in this movie. I thought it was pretty interesting that you could find Ghibli co-founder Takahata in this movie, as he was in the same room as the protagonist during his real-life events. I remember it was like somewhere in the middle of the movie where he goes into the doctor's office and it turns out that like he just needs food.
So what makes Grave of the Fireflies such a work of art? Well, for starters, let's discuss the animation. Now, the animation here may not be the flashiest like a Miyazaki film, but it's great with its down-to-earth art, really capturing the essence of humanity with each frame.
The animators over at Studio Ghibli were animating parts of this movie in conjunction with parts of My Neighbor Totoro as well, and there were times when some of them would even say that they didn't know which movies they were animating it for. They were just following the instructions, I guess. And apparently everything came out great for both movies, even though one is like really happy and one is like really depressing.
I could just see Miyazaki and Takahata like going up to the animators like, here, draw this really cute, plushy, furry type animal. Oh, isn't he just adorable? Now I want you to draw a dead body. The English voice acting is surprisingly good in this film. They're able to convey emotions and capture the spirit of their characters.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. The dubbing here is pretty good, but the majority of times that I watch this movie, I lean more towards watching it with the Japanese audio, but both are pretty good. I would recommend both.
Now the story, as we mentioned before, is such a non-stop, emotional roller coaster ride. It doesn't even give you time to breathe. It just keeps hitting you with emotional scene after emotional scene after emotional scene. But it's extremely well told and well structured. And it does a really good job at showcasing the eerily realistic details of the horrors of war and its victims, the innocent.
Because Grave of the Fireflies is based off of a true story, there are a few things which are added here, which of course didn't happen in the real events. Of course, the protagonist dying, which is something that we know didn't happen, or otherwise he wouldn't be able to tell the events of his life, and also because the fact that this is based on a true story, it's not always going to follow any sort of narrative structure. It's basically, the entire length of the movie is total tragedy here. It's a very, We've probably beat this dead horse enough. It's a sad movie. We've said it 1,000 times by now, I'm sure, because that's what it is. But it is unrelenting in its despair, and I think that if this were any other movie that would follow any sort of narrative structure, they would add moments of comedy or moments where it's more upbeat so that you can feel relief from all of the tragedy that you're feeling. But with this, it's just constant throughout the entire movie. Once you get a few minutes in, or actually within the very first second, where you see such a terrible scene where the protagonist is dying under like a bridge or something somewhere, like right in the beginning of the movie, you know that this is going to be something which is just going to keep you in a sad and depressed emotional state for the rest of the movie.
Now, many have described this film as an anti-war film, but its director, Isao Takahata, says that it's not an anti-war film. So there's got a lot of people debating whether or not this film is really an anti-war film, or maybe it's just a really personal story following these two characters living through the tragedy. What do you think, Bob?
I actually don't believe The Grave of the Fireflies is an anti-war film, because it's simply a film which tells the perspective of someone during his life events and is not created with the intention of pushing any sort of moral standing point on war. And I also don't think that there are many, if not any, movies which show war in a positive light. I'm talking about with this level of realism. You probably aren't going to find any like that, and also especially from the perspective of a civilian where bombs are getting dropped like this. This is based on a true story, and I think if we see this as pushing any sort of moral message with its main intent, then we're kind of missing the fact that somebody lived through such terrible events. And also, if you read up on this movie, there's actually the fact that the protagonist dies in the very first second of it all. He wanted to die in this movie because it was symbolic of him being able to let go and be able to forgive himself for some of the things which happened because of him in this movie, which he still felt guilty about up until the point of making this movie, and I'm sure probably does still feel guilty about.
Very interesting points there, Bob. I definitely can see where you're coming from. As for me personally, when I initially saw the film, I did take it as an anti-war film. I mean, its imagery and tone just spoke anti-war to me, regardless of the director's intent. You know, art is so subjective that people can really take anything from any work of art. So if you see this film as an anti-war film, you wouldn't be wrong necessarily, as it does show the ugly nature of war, and a lot of anti-war films showcase that. But I also feel like this is more of a personal story, as Bob mentioned in his part. It does follow mostly Seta's life during these terrible times. It's basically, the war is the backdrop of what the real story is, which is about Seta and his little sister and how they're living through this war. Now let's touch upon the characters, most specifically the siblings. I like them a lot. They're great and very sympathetic, and their undying love for each other really tugged at my heartstrings.
Grave of the Fireflies is a movie which realistically articulates the struggles of all of its characters. Not only does it flesh out the protagonist very well with Seta and his sister, but also we get a detailed look at everyone else in the environment here as well, and everything feels very natural for the setting. And I think the reason for this is that Grave of the Fireflies is actually based on a true story, so people act how they acted in real life, and things happen, for the most part, how they happen in real life. So it feels like people are transitioning over into this survival mode, and you can see this nuance of they want to help other people, but they know that they can't. They're in survival mode, and one day's worth of food that they give away to somebody else is one less day that their family can eat. And we also see this not only when Seta is also on his own and trying to fend for himself and his sister, but with his aunt, who they have problems together, and Seta can no longer continue to live there. And I don't really blame her per se, but Seta was just someone who failed to grasp the full effect of war. It kind of felt like he was someone that felt like it was something that would pass given some time, but he didn't really he wasn't able to understand any of it, and this caused problems between him and his aunt, and she knew that he just wasn't able to pull his own weight, and something had to change.
And the last praise I'll give this film is for its ending. The ending is quite bittersweet. Yes, it is very tragic, very heartbreaking, but there's a sense of relief that it's over. Not only for the characters, but also for the audience. I mean, God, after almost an hour and 30 minutes, things end kind of peacefully.
I can kind of agree with you about the movie having a relief at the end. Now, it doesn't have anything to do with the story itself, because we all know what's going to happen at the end, but for me, I just feel like when the movie's over, I'm kind of honestly glad that it's over, because it's such a long and traumatic experience in watching this. Everything is so graphic, and from beginning to end, it's just this depressing mood, and I understand somebody did live through this, and that may be insensitive, but that's just the way that I feel about it. This movie definitely does make me feel kind of depressed just looking at this all and seeing so many people suffer like that. It's definitely something that is hard to watch, and yeah, the ending, I can't really say that it comes to a surprise to many people, because it actually shows us right in the beginning what was going to happen in the end, but I can gladly say that I will never have to watch this movie again.
Overall, again, this is a beautifully made movie, and Takahata definitely has an eye for capturing realism. Like, seriously, I'm so impressed by his directorial style, and it's such a huge difference from his contemporary Miyazaki. Miyazaki loves doing grand, larger-than-life, fantastical stories, and his are more grounded, capturing the human nature in its essence, and that's what really makes his style stand out the most. And I have to say, this is one of the greatest films, not just Studio Ghibli, one of the greatest films I've ever seen, and I'm going to give it, of course, a 5 out of 5 stars. It is an epic masterpiece.
I just wanted to thank Black Critic Guy for inviting me on for his Ghibli month right now, even though I got the short end of the straw and had to talk about and also remember the most depressing movie out of all of them. You're a real piece of work, Tony, you know that?
Oh man, I am just so grateful that we were able to cross that river already. But as always, guys, I'm not the end-all be-all opinion when it comes to Grave of the Fireflies. I would love to know what you guys thought about the film as well. Did you love it to death? Do you think it's one of the greatest Studio Ghibli films ever made? Or did you think it was way too depressing, you just couldn't get into it, and you thought all the characters were unlikable? Now let me know, what is the most depressing Studio Ghibli film you've ever seen? Comment below and let me know. I want to take this time to personally thank BOBSAMURAI for finally making it on my channel. Like, we've been talking for almost a year and a half. We've been buddies for so long, and how's it taken us this long, Bob, for you to be on my channel? Like, this should have happened months ago. But regardless, I'm glad that he's finally here. He's one of my favorite YouTubers to watch, anime YouTubers, and I highly recommend it if you haven't heard of him, and if you haven't, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Go check out his channel immediately. There's a link in the description to his page. Also, if you'd like to support the Black Critic Guy just a smidge more, why not donate to my Patreon account? Link is in the description. And if you want to send me any BCG fan mail, why not send it to this P.O. box right up here? And as always, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to see more videos on this channel, be a part of the Black Critic crew, please hit that subscribe button below. Like this video if you really enjoyed it. And I'm Tony Watt II, desperately needing to watch that film right there after the film that I just saw as the Black Critic Guy. Till then, peace, YouTube!
Nerds, nerdettes, and gamers, game the fuck on!
Damn it, Bob!